See who would want you, my cheating girlfriend laughed dismissively. I walked away with my dignity intact. A year later, she watched me dance with a supermodel. I never thought I'd be sharing this story publicly, but after everything that's happened, it feels almost therapeutic to put it into words. I'm Lucas, 29, just your average guy who believes in hard work and honesty. I've always valued loyalty, respect, and self-worth in my relationships. Nothing extraordinary about me, decent job in marketing, small apartment in the city, and a close circle of friends I've known for years. My life was comfortable, if somewhat predictable. That all changed when I met Rachel 3 years ago. We were introduced by mutual friends at a rooftop bar downtown. It was one of those perfect summer evenings, the kind where the sunset paints the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the city lights begin to twinkle as darkness falls. She walked in, and the entire atmosphere shifted. Rachel was stunning, long auburn hair, confident smile, and this magnetic energy that seemed to pull everyone toward her. At 27, she already had a successful career in public relations, working with some of the city's most elite clients. She wore a simple black dress that somehow looked more elegant than anything else in the room. I couldn't believe it when she laughed at my terrible jokes and asked for my number at the end of the night. Looking back, I should have recognized how stars-struck I was from the beginning. I thought I'd hit the relationship jackpot, the kind of fairy tale meeting you see in movies. But what I mistook for destiny would eventually lead me through an emotional hell I never saw coming. The first 6 months with Rachel were incredible. We explored hidden restaurants across the city, took weekend trips to the coast, and spent countless nights talking until sunrise. She was affectionate, thoughtful, and seemed genuinely invested in our relationship. I introduced her to my family, who immediately adored her. My mother pulled me aside during a family dinner and whispered, "Don't let this one get away." If only she had known what was coming. I was falling hard and fast. I noticed how often other men would stare when we were out together. Businessmen would hold their gazes a little too long, bartenders would be overly attentive. Initially, I felt a mixture of pride and mild insecurity. How had someone like me ended up with someone like her? I'm not unattractive, but I'm not turning heads when I walk into a room. Rachel did that effortlessly, but I trusted her completely, and she never gave me reason to worry, at least not at first. Until things began to change. It started subtly. Rachel began canceling our plans last minute. Work emergencies, she explained. Her phone, once casually left on tables or counters, was now perpetually in her hand or face down beside her. Password protected. When I'd call during her late meetings, the background noise sometimes sounded more like a restaurant or bar than an office. The kisses became perfunctory, the conversations shorter. She'd become irritable when I asked about her day or who she was texting. "Why are you always interrogating me?" she'd snap, making me feel irrational for asking normal questions. Once I noticed a text notification from someone named Mike flash across her screen. When I casually mentioned it, she became defensive. "He's a client. I've told you how demanding they can be. Do you want me to lose my job because my boyfriend is insecure?" I backed off, feeling guilty for even bringing it up, but the knot in my stomach grew tighter. Friends noticed the shift in her behavior before I allowed myself to. My best friend, Ryan, finally pulled me aside during a group dinner that Rachel had bailated on at the last minute. "I'm just going to say it," Ryan said, lowering his voice. "Something's not right with Rachel. The constant cancellations, the secretive behavior. Kate saw her at Meridian Lounge last week with some guy, and they definitely weren't discussing business. I don't want to see you get hurt, but you need to open your eyes." I defended her fiercely. She was stressed about work. I was being paranoid. Kate must have been mistaken. Our friends were jealous of our relationship. I created every possible excuse to avoid confronting the growing knot in my stomach, the instinctive feeling that something was very wrong. But after 3 months of increasing secrecy and declining intimacy, I couldn't ignore the signs anymore. Rachel had stopped sharing details about her day. Our conversations felt superficial. When we were together, she was constantly distracted by her phone, smiling at messages that I wasn't allowed to see. Twice she came home smelling of unfamiliar cologne. When I pointed it out, she claimed it was a new client who had hugged her goodbye after a meeting. One night she claimed to be working late, but a colleague of mine spotted her at a restaurant across town with a well-dressed man I'd never seen before. "They looked intimate," my colleague said uncomfortably. "I wouldn't have mentioned it, but I know how much you care about her." I was drowning in doubt, caught between trusting the woman I loved and trusting my instincts. After another sleepless night, I made the hardest decision of my life. I called a private investigator. The meeting with the pie felt surreal. We met in a quiet coffee shop downtown, away from anywhere Rachel might frequent. He was a middle-aged man with kind eyes that had seen too much and a demeanor that suggested nothing would surprise him anymore. I handed over $2,000, nearly emptying my savings account and every detail I knew about Rachel's schedule. I felt sick to my stomach. Part of me hoped he would find nothing, that all my suspicions were just paranoia. The rational part of me knew better. "This happens more than you'd think," the pie said gently, seeing my distress. "Better to know the truth than live with uncertainty." For 2 weeks, I tried to act normal while knowing someone was documenting my girlfriend's movements. The waiting was its own form of torture. I alternated between convincing myself I was making a huge mistake and preparing for the worst. Rachel seemed to notice nothing, continuing her pattern of late nights and vague explanations. When the pie's report finally arrived in my email, I sat in my car for nearly an hour before finding the courage to open it. What I saw shattered everything I thought I knew about our relationship. The evidence was irrefutable. Dozens of photos showing Rachel entering luxury hotels with not one but 2 different men. Images of her kissing a man I recognized as a client from her firm. Receipts from expensive dinners I knew nothing about. The scope of her deception was breathtaking. But what destroyed me wasn't just the photos. 2 days after receiving the report, I went to surprise Rachel at a happy hour her firm was hosting. I thought maybe I was overreacting, that seeing her in her professional element would remind me of why I fell for her. I arrived early and was about to approach her when I heard her voice from around the corner, speaking to a group of her colleagues. "Lucas, God, he's so clueless," she was saying, her voice slightly tipsy and much louder than she probably realized. "He actually thinks we're exclusive. It's kind of cute in a pathetic way." I froze, feeling physically ill as her friends laughed. "Why do you even keep him around?" someone asked. "He's stable and convenient," Rachel replied dismissively. "Pays for things without complaining, doesn't ask too many questions, perfect for when I need a +1 or someone to watch my dog when I'm otherwise occupied." More laughter. I slipped away before anyone saw me, the words burning into my memory with more power than any photograph could. I drove to our apartment, technically hers, but I'd been living there for the past year with the printed report burning a hole in my bag. Rachel was home early for once, lounging on the couch scrolling through her phone. She barely looked up when I entered. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. What followed was the most painful conversation of my life. At first, she denied everything, calling me crazy and paranoid. When I silently placed the photos on the coffee table, her strategy shifted from denial to attack. "Are you serious? You had me followed." Her voice rose with indignation. "That's psychotic behavior, Lucas. You need help." I remained silent, placing more photos down one by one. Then I told her what I'd overheard at the happy hour. Her expression transformed as she realized the extent of what I knew. What happened next still haunts me. Rachel laughed, not a nervous laugh or an embarrassed one. A cold, dismissive laugh that made my blood freeze. "What did you expect?" she asked, her voice dripping with contempt. "Look at you and then look at me. Did you honestly think you were good enough for someone like me? You should be grateful I stayed with you as long as I did." Her words cut deeper than the betrayal itself. "You'll never find anyone like me again," she continued, seemingly enjoying the pain flickering across my face. "Go ahead and try, see who would want you." In that moment, something inside me shifted. The devastation was still there, but alongside it came a strange sense of clarity. I deserved better than this, better than her. "Thank you," I said quietly. "For what?" She looked genuinely confused. "For showing me exactly who you are before I wasted any more of my life with you." I packed my essential belongings in silence while she alternated between angry tirades and sudden attempts at reconciliation. By the time I walked out the door, she was crying, asking me not to leave. The manipulation was so transparent now that I could see her clearly for the first time. I crashed on Ryan's couch for a week before finding a small studio apartment. The place was barely bigger than a shoebox, a stark contrast to Rachel's spacious 2-bedroom with its city views. But it was mine, a clean slate. I went through the painful process of separating our lives, returning her spare key, collecting the few remaining items from her place while she was at work, dividing our friends into those who knew the truth and those who believed whatever story she was telling. I blocked Rachel's number, email, and social media. Still, she found ways to reach me. First came angry messages from unknown numbers. How dare I leave her? Who did I think I was? Then came the tearful voicemails claiming she'd made a terrible mistake and needed me. The emotional whiplash was exhausting. "You're nothing without me," one message declared. "I miss you so much. Please give me another chance," begged another the very next day. The healing process was neither quick nor linear. Some days I could barely get out of bed, replaying her words in my head. Not good enough. Other days, I felt a surge of gratitude for escaping when I did. I threw myself into work, joined a gym, and reconnected with friends I'd neglected during my relationship with Rachel. The nights were the hardest. I'd lie awake, wondering if she was right, if I had somehow been delusional to think someone like her could genuinely love someone like me. These thoughts were poison, and I knew it, but they crept in during my weakest moments. Ryan and my other friends rallied around me. They dragged me out when I would have stayed home ruminating. They listened patiently when I needed to vent. They reminded me of who I was before Rachel and helped me rediscover that person. Slowly, painfully, I rebuilt my sense of self-worth. 6 months of therapy helped me understand the dynamics of our toxic relationship and why I'd stayed despite the red flags. I wasn't ready to date again, but I was starting to feel like myself, perhaps even a stronger version of myself than before. Then came my 10-year high school reunion. I nearly didn't go. The thought of explaining my failed relationship to former classmates seemed exhausting. But Ryan, who had been my rock throughout the breakup, insisted it would be good for me to reconnect with old friends. Plus, he added with a smirk, I heard Elise is coming. Elise had been the quiet, artsy girl in our graduating class. We'd been lab partners in chemistry, and I'd always enjoyed her dry humor and thoughtful perspective. She had this way of seeing beauty in unexpected places, finding the perfect shot for the yearbook, or turning our lab reports into miniature works of art. According to Ryan, she'd gone on to become a surprisingly successful model after college, working internationally for major fashion houses. "Stop exaggerating," I laughed, not believing him. Elise had been pretty in high school, but in an understated way, not the kind of stunning that typically defined the modeling world. "Google her," Ryan shrugged. "She goes by Elise T now." I did, and was shocked to find page after page of results. Elise walking runways in Paris, Elise in Vogue, Elise as the face of a major luxury brand's spring campaign. It didn't seem possible that this was the same girl who once helped me balance chemical equations while wearing paint-splattered jeans. The reunion was held at an upscale hotel downtown. I arrived late, hopping to slip in unnoticed. The ballroom was packed with familiar faces aged by a decade of adult life. I recognized former football stars with receding hairlines, the prom queen who now had laugh lines around her eyes, teachers who turned completely gray. I was grabbing a drink at the bar when I heard my name. "Lucas, I was hoping you'd be here." I turned to find Elise standing beside me and nearly dropped my glass. The shy girl from chemistry class had transformed into a poised, stunning woman. Her dark hair was shorter now, framing a face that had appeared on billboards and magazine covers, though I hadn't made the connection until that moment. But her smile, that was exactly as I remembered, genuine and slightly mischievous. "Elise, wow, it's great to see you," I stammered, suddenly feeling like an awkward teenager again. "Still the same Lucas," she smiled. "Always genuine." We found a quiet corner and talked for hours, oblivious to the reunion happening around us. Elise told me about her unexpected modeling career, which she'd fallen into while studying photography in college. But what captivated me was her passion for the humanitarian work she'd been doing alongside modeling, using her platform to advocate for educational opportunities for girls in developing countries. "It's bizarre, honestly," she confessed, gesturing to herself. "I basically get paid to wear clothes and look serious, but it's allowed me to fund the work that actually matters." "That's incredible," I said, meaning it. "You were always different from everyone else in the best way." "Enough about me," she said eventually. "What's your story these days?" I hesitated before giving her an honest account of the past year, meeting Rachel, the betrayal, and the recovery process. I expected sympathy or awkward discomfort, but Elise just listened intently. "Her loss," she said simply when I finished. "You always were one of the good ones, Lucas. I had such a crush on you in high school." "Wait, what? You did?" I nearly choked on my drink. "Of course, I was just too shy to do anything about it. Plus, you were dating Sarah Wilson's senior year." The conversation flowed effortlessly as we caught up on the decade between graduation and now. When the reunion ended, neither of us was ready to say goodbye. We moved to a 24-hour diner and continued talking until sunrise, watching the city slowly come to life around us as we shared stories over endless cups of coffee. Our first real date followed a week later. I was nervous in a way I hadn't been in years, spending too much time choosing a shirt and overthinking the restaurant choice. But from the moment Elise arrived, all anxiety vanished. She showed up in jeans and a simple blouse, her hair pulled back, looking nothing like her magazine covers and all the more beautiful for it. Dating Elise was entirely different from my experience with Rachel. There was no game playing, no carefully manufactured persona. She was authentic, kind, and transparent. When she couldn't make plans because of work, she would call to explain rather than sending a vague text. She showed interest in my life and work, asking thoughtful questions and remembering the details. "That marketing campaign you mentioned last week, how did the client respond to it?" she'd ask, genuinely curious about my answer. Once, when I expressed surprise that she remembered such a minor detail, she looked confused. "Of course I remember. It's important to you, so it's important to me." 3 months into our relationship, Elise invited me to join her on a work trip to Brussels. She had a major photo shoot for a European fashion house and would be there for a week. "I want you to be part of my world," she said. "Besides, Brussels in the spring is magical." For a moment, insecurity flashed through me, memories of Rachel's words, that cruel laugh. What would someone like Elise, who worked with the most attractive people in the world, want with someone like me? As if reading my thoughts, she took my hand. "There's no one I'd rather have with me," she said softly. "You see me, the real me. Do you know how rare that is?" The trip was beyond anything I could have imagined. We stayed in a charming hotel near the Grand Place, exploring the city together when she wasn't working. I watched with pride as she transformed in front of the camera, professional and focused. The photographer treated her with respect, and she introduced me to everyone on set as her boyfriend without hesitation. On our last night in Brussels, we attended a gala hosted by the fashion house. The event was held in a restored 17th century building, with original artwork on the walls and waiters carrying champagne on silver trays. Surrounded by models, designers, and industry elites, I initially felt out of place. But Elise never left my side, holding my hand and including me in every conversation. "You know what I love about you?" she whispered as we slow danced under crystal chandeliers. "You're real. In an industry built on illusions, you're the most authentic person I know." A photographer captured us mid-dance, my arms around her waist, both of us laughing at some shared joke. The following day, Elise posted the photo on her Instagram account, which had over 1 million followers. "Found my missing piece," read the caption with a simple heart emoji. I didn't think much about the social media post. My account was relatively private, and I'd effectively cut ties with anyone connected to Rachel after our breakup. But the internet has a way of making the world smaller than we expect. About 3 weeks after returning from Brussels, I received a seemingly casual LinkedIn connection request from Rachel. I ignored it. 2 days later, she followed my rarely used Instagram account. Then came a birthday card to my office, though my birthday was still months away. "Just thought of you and wanted to say hi," she'd written, including her phone number at the bottom. I threw it away and thought nothing more of it until Ryan mentioned she'd been asking about me. "She cornered me at Riverfront Bar last weekend," he told me over lunch. "Asked a million questions about how you were doing, if you were seeing anyone. I told her you were doing great and left it at that. But she seemed really interested in getting back in touch." When our mutual friend Taylor's engagement party came around, I wasn't surprised to see Rachel there. She had made herself up to the nines, wearing the red dress I had once told her was my favorite. She made a point of coming over, acting as though our breakup had been a mutual, amicable decision. "You look great, Lucas," she said, her hand lingering on my arm longer than appropriate. "We should grab coffee sometime, catch up." I made a noncommittal response and moved away, spending the rest of the evening with other friends. But I could feel her eyes on me throughout the night, watching, calculating. The next day, my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. "I saw the photos of you and Elise on social media. How did someone like you manage that? She's literally a model. We really should talk soon. I've been doing a lot of thinking about us. I miss what we had. I made a terrible mistake. Rachel." My heart raced as memories flooded back, the humiliation, the pain, her cruel words. Throughout the next week, more messages arrived, each more desperate than the last. She claimed she'd changed, that she regretted her actions, that she'd been going through a difficult time when she cheated. What had started as subtle reconnection attempts had transformed into increasingly desperate pleas to meet, just to talk. "I know I hurt you, but we had something special," one message read. "This could be our second chance." Another said, "I've never stopped thinking about you. No one has ever made me feel the way you did." The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman who once laughed at the idea that I could be good enough for her was now begging for my attention because I was with someone she perceived as above her own level. It wasn't about me at all, it was about her ego, her need to prove she could still have me if she wanted. As I stared at my phone that evening, Elise curled up beside me reading a book, I realized I felt nothing for Rachel anymore. No anger, no pain, not even satisfaction at her apparent jealousy. I was simply done. I composed a single reply. "Thank you for showing me I wasn't good enough for you. It led me to someone who knows my worth. I wish you well, but please don't contact me again." Then I blocked the number and deleted the conversation. Elise looked up from her book and asked who I was texting. "Just closing a chapter," I replied, pulling her closer. 2 days later, Rachel sent flowers to my office with a note begging me to reconsider. I donated them to a nearby hospital. She emailed, she messaged mutual friends, she even coincidentally showed up at my favorite coffee shop. Each attempt met with the same response: silence. Eventually, she got the message. I heard through the grapevine that she'd told friends I was obsessed with her and that she'd had to cut contact. I didn't care. The narrative she needed to construct to protect her ego meant nothing to me anymore. It's been 18 months since Elise and I reconnected at our reunion. We've since moved in together, splitting our time between her apartment in New York and mine when she's not traveling for work. Despite her success and status, she remains the down-to-earth girl I knew in high school, brilliant, kind, and genuinely supportive of my career and goals. The engagement ring is hidden in my desk drawer, waiting for our anniversary next month. I've never been more certain of anything. Sometimes I think about Rachel and our toxic relationship. In a strange way, I'm grateful for the experience. Her betrayal forced me to establish boundaries, recognize my own worth, and understand what healthy love actually feels like. Had she not shown me I wasn't good enough, I might never have found myself here, truly happy, genuinely loved, and finally enough. They say the best revenge is living well. I never sought to hurt Rachel or pay her back for the pain she caused. But there's a certain poetic justice in knowing that by walking away from someone who couldn't see my value, I found someone who treasures it daily. Sometimes the things we think will break us end up leading us exactly where we need to be.